Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Joint Archives Committee. I'll just pass you over and see if there's been any apologies for this morning.
We've only had apologies from Janet Higgins.
And it's a little bit different today because we're going to be appointing the chair and vice chair. So I'll hand that over to yourself as well, Chantal. Did you want us to do introductions or just... Yeah, okay. So if we start with introductions, I'll start with myself. So I'll be chairing this. So I'm Hayley Coles, councillor for the Heaths in Tamworth, but also cabinet member for culture and communities, and archives and libraries sit in my area. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela Glithero, Director of Strategy, Economy and Communications at Stoke-on-Trent City Council.
Hello, I'm John Penton, councillor for Rugeley, Etchin Hill and the Heath.
Hi, I'm Councillor Lynn Dean for Maybank and Woolstanton in Newcastle-under-Lyme.
Nick Lakin, councillor for Bradwell and Porthill, and also cabinet member for children and families.
Hello, Anthony Screen, councillor for Kidsgrove and also cabinet member for communities and safety.
Nikki Mihailovic, Senior Finance Business Partner supporting Catherine Mann's areas. Could I just introduce two of my colleagues that are just sitting at the back as observers today? I'm actually changing roles next week, moving on to support children and families 100%. So John Broad at the back will be taking over from me. He's Senior Finance Business Partner. And then Cheryl Gray is the Finance Business Partner that will support John with any work for the archives area. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chantal Denham. I work in Member and Democratic Services and I am the clerk to this committee.
I'm Sarah English. I'm the Engagement and Access Manager for Staffordshire Archives and Heritage.
I'm Joanna Terry and I'm Head of Archives, Heritage and Culture for Staffordshire County Council and Head of the Joint Archives Service.
Morning everybody, I'm Catherine Mann. I'm the Assistant Director for Culture, Rural and Safer Communities.
I'm Councillor Sarah Hill. I'm Councillor for Penkhull, Springfield and Stoke-on-Trent, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services, and like you, libraries and archives come into part of my remit.
Hi, I'm Councillor Sarah Jane Colclough, Councillor for Bentley, Ubberley and Townsend and Stoke-on-Trent, Cabinet Member for Children's Services.
Okay, thank you. I believe I'll pass you on to Chantal, who's going to vote in the chair and vice chair.
So as you're aware from the induction session this morning that we had, that the chair and vice chair rotate every year. Last year the chair was Stoke, so that means that this year the chair will go to Staffordshire. So I'm guessing, are we going to vote on Hayley?
I think somebody needs to propose Hayley Coles to be chair of the Joint Archives Committee.
I will propose Hayley.
Yeah, that's fine. So I think that's Hayley elected. Yeah. And it's Sarah Hill needs to be proposed as the vice chair. No, do I need to say that? Sorry, what was that? I think you need to say all those in favour. Yeah.
So we all vote in favour? Thank you. Thank you.
And then I suggest, Hayley, that you propose Sarah Hill as vice chair and we repeat the process.
And then I'll propose Sarah Hill as the vice chair.
I'll second that proposal.
So we've all voted on the Vice Chair as well now. All those in favour? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so thank you for that. We'll move on to, have we got any declarations of interest, conflicts of interest? No? None noted, okay. And then we'll move over to, has everyone read the minutes and are they approved? Any questions or changes to the minutes from the last meeting?
I was present at the last meeting. I can move those as a true copy.
Thank you. Okay, so then we'll move on to Joanne, that will go through the annual report.
Thank you, Chair. So, as well as the report in your pack, I have got a presentation to pick out the sort of highlights of the year for the annual report for the service. So, the terms of the joint agreement for archive services in Staffordshire County Council and Stoke-on-Trent City Council requires an annual report of the work of the joint archive service to be reported to the annual meeting in June. So the annual report gives a full overview of the range of activities, progress and performance of the service. And this year's annual report demonstrates significant achievements to meeting the overall strategic objectives of the service within the forward plan from 2021 to 2025. So just picking out some of the significant achievements. For the Staffordshire service, the £8.7 million National Lottery Heritage funded Staffordshire History Centre project made very significant progress. So during the summer of 2024, construction completed with the site handed over in phases from September onwards. And last November, the service reopened its doors to visitors following completion of the construction work. So after two and a half years after closing the Staffordshire Record Office to in-person visitors, it was on the 6th of November that we welcomed people back to use the modern research facilities, exhibition space, restored William Salt Library and a dedicated activity room and spaces for volunteers. The service has seen a significant number of visitors and a really positive response to the new offer, which displays the archive, museum and William Salt Library collections together for the first time. And in February 2025, we were really delighted to be informed that the museum service was fully accredited again by the Arts Council England. And this was a direct result of the History Centre project and the service regaining its own exhibition space. And that meant that accreditation was restored for the first time since 2017. So this year the service developed and toured 2 large and 3 small exhibition venues. So this is to take the collections out and about across the county. They made a total of 12 appearances at 11 different venues. Beneath Our Feet explored industrial and agricultural heritage of Staffordshire, and the Leap to Llandudno exhibition covered the history of holidays and leisure for local residents. Both of those exhibitions are actually in Stafford at the moment. So Beneath Our Feet is at the History Centre, and Leap to Llandudno will shortly be available, tomorrow, at the Ancient High House in Stafford. So external design companies worked alongside the service staff to create really engaging and attractive displays. 2 smaller exhibitions, which were legacies of projects run with university partners, were Knowing Your Onions, which was co-curated with children at a holiday scheme in Tamworth and individuals of Eastern European heritage. They use food and recipes to identify heritage and belonging. That continues to tour at community venues around the county. So there were 2 other exhibitions at the Staffordshire History Centre. A Case for the Ordinary, which was about the experience of patients in the county's 19th and early 20th century asylums, and then the more recent exhibition up until May, which was A Brush with Faith, which was about J.L. Pettit's watercolour landscapes. So in total, the touring exhibitions were visited by over 55,000 visitors. The City Archives celebrated its first full year of opening on the 21st of May this year, and since reopening in May 2024, that's reopening at the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery in Stoke-on-Trent, they've welcomed over 940 visitors to the new reading room. They've had 143 attendees at various events. The biggest change that the service has noticed is in the number of archives and local studies items produced, going from previously 908 items to 3,838. So that's over a 300% increase. And that's thanks to a huge amount of work done by the team at Stoke during the relocation project to add material to our online catalogue and making it easier for people to find and access. So there have been lots of sort of overseas visitors and researchers accessing particularly the ceramic archive collections. So a visitor from Japan looking at the international pottery trade, and she ordered sort of hundreds of documents in her 2-week visit. The City Archives has also played a really important role in the Stoke-on-Trent City Centenary celebrations. So as well as supporting researchers for that project, they also developed a Living Heritage City smartphone app. So that project meant that they researched and used digitised archive material, photos, plans and audio clips, along with interpretation for a heritage trail within the app, and it's called Walk the History of the City, and it guides users on a journey from the centre of Stoke to the entrance of the Potteries Museum, passing by the station and Hanley Park and other significant landmarks in the city. So that's been a sort of really interesting and innovative development by the City Archives. The centenary celebration of the 6 towns does continue through 2025, and there'll be a new digital and physical exhibition space next to the City Archives funded through the Centenary project. One of the key functions of the service is to continue to collect items and accession those collections and catalogue them. Without cataloguing, people don't know what the service holds. So whilst both parts of the service have sort of been operating in a sort of semi-open phase, fewer accessions have been taken in as whilst we've improved and increased our storage. So as a result of the History Centre project, we've had just small quantities of collections come in, mainly from private individuals, or where there's been a large collection that's been urgent for us to take in, we have taken those in. So in total, we took in about 10 shelves of material, and we've got a number of outstanding approaches that we've deferred until our new strong rooms are operational so that we can store them. So an example of the sorts of things that we received a significant deposit of material for Stafford Market, which was on the closure of the market hall for the building work that's taking place at the moment. So we've got plans and ledgers and administrative files, and we've got some really nice photographs as well. So of the 10 shelves of material, we've done 360 new catalogue entries, and even if they're not fully listed, all collections have what we call a collection level description, so it tells people that it exists and it is there. We've added 220 catalogue entries from our back catalogue. That's the items that are waiting on our backlog to be catalogued, and we've reduced that backlog by 2.75%. So at the City Archives, where their strong rooms have been accessible for the last year, they've received 51 accessions and had a number of interesting additions to collections that they already hold. And as ever, the sort of most regular additions are for ceramic archive collections. That includes Royal Dalton engraving books and the Shelley Intarsia pattern book, which you can see on screen. The archivist in the City Archives, before she went on her maternity leave last August, she did a huge amount of work cataloguing 460 new records, including a large collection from Goodwin's Jewellers of Hanley. So overall, all new accessions have got a collection level description, and most work on new accessions is on hold at the moment, looking to be resumed later this year. So since reopening the City Archives last May, as I said, they've received 940 visitors in their reading room. For our research room, that's one specific room in the History Centre, we've received 444 since the Staffordshire service opened in November, and that just covers up to the end of March. At the Staffordshire History Centre, we continued our sort of remote service up until the point that we could open. So we had more emails and inquiries, about 53% of our inquiries came in that part of the year. As we've reopened, the level of inquiries has dropped as people are actually now able to visit in person. At Stoke-on-Trent City Archives, all aspects of the service have seen an increase. Postal inquiries and emails up by 13%, telephone inquiries by 262%, and orders up by 86%. So that's continued sort of throughout the year. Also, significantly, last November, we launched a new hosted joint service website. Prior to this, the County Council's website hosted all of the information about the service, but we now have a standalone website, and that coincided with the opening of the History Centre and creates a sort of more attractive and easy to navigate homepage, promotes both the History Centre and the City Archives, and we're able to sort of show video clips and also key visitor information. So phase 1 of the project focused on building a clear navigation and uploading essential information. We're now in the second phase where we're adding we've just tested and soft launched an online shop for ticket sales and selling services, and we're also in the process of adding information to the integrated catalogue. So we're moving things over from our existing online catalogue into the new website. The number of volunteers that we have, they've continued to process a number of images to add more resources to the Staffordshire Past Track website. That's the website that holds the majority of our image collections, but it also has a couple of key map collections as well. So we've added 194 images this year, and the website received 283,115 visits this year. The History Centre blog, which was a sort of holding place for information, that continues as a way to share information about and celebrate the project, with support from volunteers for those blog posts. The Minton Archive website blog post, that's returned to sort of more regular programming post-move. So they run regular series such as Folio Friday and a pairing up, where they pair up an archive with the actual pot. And then we've had a full range of social media content to promote reopening and other events and our collections and national events. Our volunteers are really important to our offer, and we could not deliver the services without them. So volunteer groups moved back onto both our sites. Certainly at the History Centre, after a short break, they were able to start work on the collection projects. And then as a sort of new step, we've recruited a team of 12 History Centre assistant volunteers. So they support in terms of welcoming visitors and guiding them around the public spaces and signposting for further information. So we have 89 volunteers, 9 of whom undertake more than one role for the service, and they gave over 4,500 hours, which is a cost equivalent of £90,000. In Stoke, the new reading room has become the home of volunteer projects, and this work takes place on a Tuesday. Now, our volunteer profile includes sort of a range of people who are retired, but also students and younger people looking for work experience as well. So the volunteers at Stoke contributed 729 hours this year, and that covered a range of activities from cataloguing, indexing and packaging and conservation. At the end of the year, our Minton Majolica volunteers and staff received training from the Joint Service Conservator before embarking on a project to clean the artwork, and that project continues over the next 2 years. So in terms of our key performance indicators, the biggest one was that across the year, in-person visits increased significantly from just 47 in total the previous year, because we were both closed effectively, to 7,909. So it's an increase of 7,862 people, and the very bizarre percentage, which I did triple check, of 16,827%. However, to give you a more realistic comparison, comparing that to the last year that we didn't have any disruption in terms of either COVID or being temporary sort of restricted access, in 2019-20 we had 5,431 visitors. So if you look at that, it's an increase of 45.6%. So that is still a really, really healthy increase. The number of documents produced is huge, and that's increased by 222%. Similarly, the number of inquiries has gone up significantly as well, up by 16.4%. Attendees at events across the service up at 16.7%. And then our volunteer hours increased by over 13%, and that's as we were able to return them to both of our sites. We took part in a National Archive customer survey in sort of the autumn of 2024. Stoke-on-Trent was able to take part fully because they were already open. We took part partially as the History Centre opened during the survey period. The survey no longer asks for an overall satisfaction rating. So what we took as the measure was the quality and appropriateness of staff advice. So it's scored out of 1 to 10. And 94.5% of respondents scored the staff advice a 10, which is really, really high and reflects the professional team, you know, that work hard to deliver that service. So as a joint service, we're required to have a risk register for the service, which covers risks to collections, to physical collections, digital collections, to staff, members of the public and volunteers, and operation of the public service, and forward planning. So of the 16 risks that we have in total, 6 are rated green, 8 amber, and 1 is a red. And the red risk relates around digital archives, completing the new website, and the transfer. We are required to transfer our cataloguing software to an updated package. So we're moving from a server-based system to a cloud-based system because our provider is moving to that system. Due to the delivery of the 2 major capital projects, we have been delayed in introducing Preservica software, which is to look after digital collections. So we have the system, but we've not been able to progress that. We are making progress, though, on development of a business case to identify the resources so that we can bring that system into use. At the moment, in terms of speeding up the transfer of data to our catalogue on the new website, we're using additional hours for a member of the team to do that work and speed it up. We did remove 2 risks, which related to transforming the service through the capital projects. We've completed that work. And also, we took off the COVID-19 pandemic, as we do feel that is now a thing of the past and no longer applicable. And my final slide. So normally at the performance report in February, I bring in a benchmarking exercise. The data wasn't available in February, so I've added it to the annual report for this year. So the National Archives, which is our sector lead body, they complete an annual archive service benchmarking exercise. So it replaces something that the Chartered Institute for Public Finance and Accountancy used to do. This year, the benchmarking exercise was opened up beyond just local authority archives to all archive services. So over 2,500 services could have taken part between January and March. However, there were just 400 responses, and the highest amount was from local authority services. The survey was completed using data from 2022-2023, so quite a while ago, and whilst we still had some element of restrictions in place. There's no direct comparator for our service in terms of a service comprising a county and a city that's jointly funded by 2 authorities. There's also no comparator for a service that delivers access to archives, local studies and museum collections. So we selected our near neighbours of Warwickshire, Worcestershire, Derbyshire and Cheshire. So as you can see on screen, we performed quite well. We had the second highest number of staff, but the least number of archivists. Archivists are the professionally qualified staff that can do that work on the collections that other staff that don't have that knowledge have. We had the second highest number of volunteers working our service, but the highest number of volunteer hours, which I think just shows how well we do in recruiting and supporting volunteers. We have the second largest sort of physical analogue collection, as I call it, paper collection, and we have the most that is catalogued online, which is a fantastic testament to the work that those professional staff and volunteers do. And we also have a digital preservation system. There was only another service that has that. We have the second highest number of inquiries and the 4th highest number of website visitors. So just bear with me while I flip to my report. So the recommendations for this report are that the Joint Archives Committee receive and approve the annual report detailing the work of the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Archive Service and the Staffordshire Archive and Heritage Service for the period of April 2024 to March 2025, that the risk register for the service is reviewed and agreed, and that the benchmarking exercise comparison is noted. And obviously, I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
How do you want to do this? I've got a number of questions. Is it going to be okay? I've got about 8 questions. They are interrelated, I promise, so bear with me. Bear with me. I noticed on there that you've got the second highest number of staff and least number of archivists. Is there something we could look at there? Is there an opportunity with swapping roles over, maybe getting more archivists in, just something we could look at if that's an area of need?
So archivists have a particular professional qualification. It's at the moment a postgraduate qualification route or an apprentice route, a degree apprentice route. So it takes quite a while to train an archivist. Archivists' salaries are higher than other members of staff, so there is a significant cost implication there. So we would have to look at the costs. The service went through in terms of the Staffordshire service, that is, went through a very significant restructure in 2021, taking out 40% of the budget and over £300,000 worth of savings. And so that meant we had to streamline all of the roles across the service. We have recently recruited so before this data was collected, to a new collections manager role. The previous post holder retired, he had a museum background. The new post holder has an archivist background. So we have upped our archivist ratio by 1 FTE already without any cost implication. So we hope that will help to address some of the balance in the service.
Thank you. So the rest of my questions, sorry, I'm coming from a very corporate marketing background, are about metrics, just because I'm interested, and obviously if that's in our area, I think it'd be useful to see a little bit more data on that. So I might just read it out to you as it's kind of related. So I think we look at metrics of footfall and volunteers currently. Do we know, for instance, the uptake of the walk around the cities using the app? Would be interesting. Sorry, do you want me to pause?
Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to ask them all and come back in. I think we can get the metrics on the Living Heritage City Trail, yes.
I'd like just, because I'm nosy, to see the stats on the website, so things such as your unique visitors, the usage of the pages, just so we can see if there's anything we can do there. Around that, I wondered if we have a kind of forward-looking marketing plan or content plan where we've got the events and exhibitions promoted, where we actually advertise them. I know you've got the various websites and social media, but I think, again, just the metrics behind that would be really useful, as obviously we can have a look, and if there's any opportunity there, I can look at that. Then the other one was on, could we highlight the top 3, 5 or 10 requests on what people are looking at in the archives? I'm nearly there. And how are the exhibitions or themes decided? And I think we do we link the activities in our archives to our libraries? That's all.
So just to pick up on website stats, yes, so we procured a very specialist company to design the website for us because of the need for catalogue integration, but they are providing us with an analytics system. So at the moment we're following their specialist advice on the analytics we're collecting, but I think there is room to collect more data there. So I'm happy to share the data we've got with you. In terms of comms and marketing plan, so we worked very closely with the internal communications team at Staffordshire County Council around the launch period, and we had a lot of support there. We've got built into the Staffordshire History Centre budgets to procure specific marketing support, so to have a professional to create bespoke support for us. So that is something that we're looking to do after the initial opening period has worn off. We wanted to naturally capture that excitement around opening and then have that to look for sustainability for the future. So we will be getting that specialist input and planning there. Exhibition themes come from our collections. We've also done a lot of co-production work with audiences as well. A lot of the current exhibitions were developed as part of the activity plan, so in conjunction with National Lottery Heritage Fund. And we're just about to start the planning for the next period after the activity plan has finished. And then in terms of libraries, we have a really fantastic working relationship with the libraries, and we try and collaborate on social media and promotion. We link in with the Summer Reading Challenge, so our activities will link to their themes. It's easier some years than others to find the links. And we also support outreach at libraries, so we go and do training, we support their history fairs and take objects out, and we tour small exhibitions to libraries as well.
And thank you for that. And then obviously anything on social media, any stats on that would be useful. And then could we track the kind of top 10 requests for archives? Just be interesting to see if they change over time, or I think that would be just quite useful data.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to the public service teams at both sites. They'll probably just know that from what they regularly are producing from our strong rooms, but I'll speak to the two managers for the two sites and see if we can let you have that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
A couple of questions and a couple of comments, if that's okay, Chair. I think one was the same as yours, about because you talk about visitors. Is that unique visitors, or is it visits? Just being clear what the range of people, how many people are actually coming to see us. And the other one was, I'm really pleased about the touring exhibitions, and I think it's because most people are never ever going to go into the archives, are they? But if you take something which is about their community and shows that it absolutely makes a difference, and I think more of those things would be great. And the comments, I think it's social media. I think it's really interesting, because I think certainly I get lots and lots of photos on Facebook pages about Stoke and Penkle and wherever, which I've never ever seen before. And that's really, people are really, really fascinated, aren't they? You get all sorts of comments, oh, where was this? And my dad lived there, and my mum worked in that factory over there. That's really, really interesting. I think it really, really gets people's interest in it, which is great. And I'm really pleased, this is particular, that we've got the Arthur Wood revealing voices stuff, because I knew Arthur, and he was absolutely passionate about recording people's stories, and they were amazing. And also, he was amazing about accents, and he could tell you the difference between somebody who lived in Tunstall, not now, everything's kind of changed, but then Tunstall and Longton, and different accents across the city. He was extraordinary, and I think that sort of history is so important in a way that we can do now, which we wouldn't be able to have done in years past. And I think the great work that Arthur's daughter and Ray Johnson and people have done, and those group of volunteers on that piece of work, is extraordinary, and we should really celebrate that. Thank you, Chair.
Did you have a question? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at this slightly from a different angle. Archives, it just shows how many people have visited it's interesting in their life, but I want to connect it to the placements and the education. In the report you hosted 4, and I understand why it was paused at Stoke. What's the plan to reopen at Stoke? And you had one of the slides that talked about the volunteer afternoon on the Tuesdays, and you can go for work experience. How is that linking with our back to work offers and other projects that we have around the city and the county, around those areas, like building up people's skills and getting them back into work. And I have got just one comment, which is slightly a bit different. At a previous meeting, you mentioned that we have social media partners who, I can't remember the name of them, that they put out a lot of the archives and the Salt Library. Friends of something. Is there a Friends of group?
There's the Friends of the William Salt Library, and there's also Friends of the Archive Service. Do they put content out? No. They don't.
So I think you've got a couple of questions there. Is about whether it's unique visitors or repeat, and the links to the education.
Do you want me to start and then pass over to Angela? Yeah. So you asked how many do we get repeat or unique visitors? We get both. So we do get a lot of unique visitors that are visiting the service for the very first time, but both services also have a sort of loyal core of repeat visitors that are research into your family or local history can take many months and years, and so that will take time as they sort of progress back with that, or it's just certainly I can say from observing at the History Centre, we're getting regular visits by sort of more certain families are popping in at particular times, so it's sort of part of their regular week. But we definitely get a lot of unique visitors, and I would say with both services get as mentioned overseas visitors. I would say that the City Archives, because of the quality of the ceramic archive collections, they have a lot of collectors clubs, enthusiast clubs who have in fact supported work at the City Archives, so they will obviously be more unique visitors. So there is quite a range. And you're right, the touring exhibitions give us an opportunity to take the service out to places where, parts of the county and parts of the city where it may not be possible to physically visit or just be aware, and it's a way of really reaching out. And you mentioned the local images as well. So the Past Track website has its own Facebook page, and we find that is incredibly popular when we share local images. And likewise, in terms of the social media, it's contributed to by staff from both the City Archives and the County Service as well. We sort of share that portal. There is also a dedicated Minton Archive social media as well. And I think the questions about placements related particularly to Stoke. Is that right? Yeah.
So, I think in terms of Stoke-on-Trent City Archives, we're really benefiting from being in the same building as the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery. So we have lots of educational visits to the museum, and they also take advantage of joining the two services up. And, we're working towards really having those two services really integrated as one in that space. So things like the education can be seamless, whether people want to look at archive material or the actual collection. So that's benefiting. And I think on a Tuesday is the day where, I think I'm right in saying this, the building's closed to the public, but it's still open for school visits. So we've got a nice space and time on Tuesdays where you haven't got ordinary visitors there, that we focus on children and education. And then I think in terms of the supporting people back into employment and developing skills, there's a lot of work going on in the city and across the county around volunteering. Certainly VAST, our voluntary sector organisation in the city, leads on that kind of volunteering strategic approach, and we've got more work to do in terms of linking that to our supporting people to get back into work plans and policies, because they're only just really emerging now with the new government guidance around Get Britain Working and sort of linking health, unemployment to those sort of skills development. So there's more to do there, but that's absolutely, this is one of the services, along with the museum and libraries, that can really help with all of that.
Yeah, and as Angela said, we do something similar on the county service. So we take placements from both school, sort of just for GCSE, A-level, also then a lot of university students. We also have in the County Council a scheme called Open Door, so that is a route to sort of help people back into the workplace, and we've recently had an Open Door candidate who has really worked really well with us, and we potentially might have another one coming through this year. Where we can't offer an extended placement, we direct people to our volunteer opportunities. So we have, whilst probably predominantly it is older people, we do have younger people working with us, and quite often the reason that we leave, and I think certainly in the last year, the reason they've left is they've gained employment. So it is a really, really positive outcome. We've also been trying to work through the corporate parent panel with care leavers. So Sarah, who's sitting next to me, has done a session about how we can support care leavers in terms of accessing our service, and also, you know, potentially what they might do when they leave care. So there is, as Angela said, lots of opportunities for both sides of the service to support that.
That's great. I don't think you've been to our corporate parenting sessions, have you? Sorry, through you, Chair.
Because I'm Staffordshire.
Can we invite them? We might invite you to come and speak to our children and see how it's working and the positive impacts. I did find the social media. It's FOSSA, Friends of Staffordshire, and it's not very often updated. I think we had a conversation maybe 2 meetings ago about this organisation. Are they active? Do they work close with you?
So there are 2 Friends organisations that work with the service. So the Friends of Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Archive Service are very active. They have been holding talks at the History Centre, and through that and their member subscriptions and other events that they do raise money for us. They supported the new desk at the City Archives. They love to try and secure collections for us at auction. We've missed out on one recently, but they will, you know, support us by funding that. So they are active, but I presume what you're saying is that the information on the website isn't so up to date. We can ask them to sort of provide us with some more information so that I can assure you it is a really active organisation. The Friends of the William Salt Library are somewhat less active. They do still meet, and they do about 1 event a year, but they are a group that's smaller in number. And sort of the changes to the William Salt Library mean that they're sort of rethinking through what their function and purpose is in terms of supporting the service, but they do still exist and meet.
Oh yeah, sorry. You mentioned Goodwin's Jewellers earlier on. I'm just intrigued as to the nature of their contribution, just out of interest.
Yeah, so it's a former jeweller's business in Hanley. So the records that we took in were sort of standard business sort of accounts and that, but the most interesting items, which we did share on social media, were some beautiful jewellery designs, which I certainly enjoyed very much looking at those. So they are very interesting and attractive, so that's what the collection has. So it's can be difficult to secure business archives. Sometimes it's gone out of business before we realise, or we don't know they've got such historic records, but City Archives did really well there for taking that collection in.
Yeah, just going to the living trails, a couple of questions really. How many living trails do we have within Staffordshire, and what are we doing to promote those and improve those trails?
So the one that we've been referring to is the first one in Stoke-on-Trent. I don't know if there are any others in Staffordshire, no. So we created that as part of our centenary celebrations for 2025, which is the Stoke to Hanley, with, I think I'm right in saying it was National Lottery funding, and yeah, I think it was National Lottery funding. So that was the first one, which was a bit of a pilot and enabled us to get the digital infrastructure in place, etc. And then the plan is to roll them out. So I think we're doing starting 2 more now. in the north of the city, one in the north of the city. I can't remember where the other one is at the moment. But the idea is ultimately, if we can secure the funding, we will have 6 across Stoke-on-Trent to kind of link all the individual towns.
Okay, thank you. So are any more planned for Staffordshire, the wider area? Or is it just Stoke-on-Trent you're looking at?
Yes, we don't have any heritage trails through the county at the moment. Obviously, we're covering quite a large geographical area. What we do have on the Staffordshire Fast Track website, it is mobile phone enabled and it has digital mapping on. So, for example, if you stood in Market Square in Stafford and brought that site up, it would bring up photos to show you what the square did look like. We do have physical walking tours of Stafford that we run regularly from the History Centre that are really, really popular. But obviously, be interested to know more about how the City Archives has developed it and how then also we might fund such a development.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just correct something I just said? I've just remembered it wasn't National Lottery funding, it was UK Share Prosperity funding for the Living Heritage Trail.
Thank you. 3 questions, really. What collaborations do we have with the, I'll class them as stately homes within Staffordshire? How do we map private collections? There may be some very important historical data there. And thirdly, how do we promote inter-schools, and how vigorous are we in promoting inter-schools? The rich heritage within Staffordshire. The youngsters coming through really should be knowing where we've come from, which will inform them in where we're going to. So those are the 3 questions. Thank you.
So we have really good relationships with the stately homes. The original collections from the William Salt Library and the early collections from Staffordshire Record Office that now forms the History Centre were from stately homes. A lot of the landowners were also county councillors or trustees of the William Salt Library, so we had good links. Today we have excellent links with Weston Park in the south of the county on the Staffordshire-Shropshire border, so an active ongoing relationship with that collection owner and that trust. We share volunteers, so we have volunteers that work on our collections at the History Centre, and Weston Park has volunteers that work at the house. So that's a really good relationship. Similarly, in the south of the county, we have a good relationship with Chillington Hall, where again the owner is a member of the William Salt Library Trust and a regular depositor, so we have ongoing deposits. With other stately home collections, sometimes the stately home is no longer owned now by that individual, but we've been really successful in the last, I think it's 2019, the Marquess of Anglesey collection, where the estate abodes there, that's no longer occupied by them. Following the death of the sort of heirs, as it were, in quick succession, we work with them and Arts Council England and DCMS to secure that archive through acceptance in lieu, so that's now wholly owned. It's been gifted to the County Council to look after on behalf of the nation, and certainly there are other landowners where we sort of work with them. The other key landowners we have connection with are the Earls of Dartmouth. Again, they don't own any land here anymore, but they've got a very significant archive that also covers, as well as the UK, it covers the United States. So there's regular contact with them, and also sort of MP collections as well as one that we've got a regular contact with. So some of them, the estate's no longer live, for want of a better word, but with others we do have good connections. In terms of mapping private collections, we are aware of other archives that are held in private hands, and in some cases access provided, other cases less so, but we're aware. We facilitate access for one collection. We're supported on that by the National Archives, so they may be aware of a collection that we're not, and they'll make us aware of something, and likewise we will potentially refer people to them. So we do that sort of through local knowledge in the team, or also sometimes our friends might make us aware of something, or other volunteers, and we follow up on those leads, as it were. So we do have awareness of other collections that we don't hold, but we know that they're there. And I'm going to pass you over to Sarah to talk about schools.
So we're in the very early days of our school offer. We've done a lot of development work with local schools, and we've just launched the offer earlier this year. We currently host a teacher network. We've got over 70 teachers across the county signed up to that, so they get direct communication, special offers and priority booking through that network. We have been to head teacher events run by Intrust to promote our offer, so speaking directly to school leads. We've had some support from our internal comms team, sending out information via the school bag, and we're just about to launch some free CPD events for teachers so that we can try and get them to really come and see the offer. We know the challenge is that a lot of them will be quite set in their planning that they've already done, and as a new offer we've got to convince them to make space in their planning for us, so we do know it's a challenge. We're also considering doing a physical mail drop to schools that are walking distance of the history centre, because we know that's a big factor in planning where you might take your pupils to on a school visit. So there's quite a lot coming up at the moment in terms of reaching teachers. Oh yeah, and we're also looking to investigate ways we could help support them to offset travel costs for those that do need coaches.
Do we send folk actually into schools to speak to the pupils and give actual talks on the history?
Yeah, so we have part of our outreach offer, we can do classroom sessions or assemblies, and that's at a much reduced cost, so much more affordable for schools. Also, when we were developing the programme, our learning officer went out to 10 local schools and spoke to them at assemblies about the offer as well. And we have converted some of those into bookings.
Any more questions? No. Do you want me to summarise what I've taken from that section as, I think, actions? I think it's mostly around data, on clarity on football, those that are unique visitors and return visitors, and any stats on any plans that you've got coming that'd be good to be reviewed, and social media, website, footfall. And I think it'd be useful actually, as we're looking at teens, younger audiences, to look at the demographics that are, coming, going, using the services, and combine that with the schools outreach so we can see the impact we're having and measure that, because I think that's quite a useful statistic without going over the top with statistics, but always useful. And as something I was just going to actually mention that I noticed that we had a letter from the Secretary of State for Business and Trade. My mouth can get around that just. And I had noticed that creative industries is listed as a key focus. Obviously, I know it's a bit of a broad stretch, but it might be something that we can start looking at, that hopefully there might even be more avenues or funding coming that way. And then this was just something that, in being debriefed about the archives, that I had a little idea in my head that might be quite good at looking at, and is actually when you, so if you walk down the corridors downstairs, there's old photographs of ladies that were in the war, pre-war, local people, that I think is fantastic from the archives. And you can actually get AI apps now, and we could do some work where we bring their stories to life, much like the Vice Chair was saying, with different voices. I just think that especially will appeal to the younger generation, and bridging that heritage to the new tech would be quite a good way of doing that. So just put that on there. If that's everything, we'll move on to the next section then, which I just need to check. So this is the...
I think before we move on, you need to, in terms of going back to the recommendations of the report.
Sorry, okay, go back to recommendations for the report.
Yeah, Yeah, so the recommendations, as a reminder, are that the committee receive and approve the annual report detailing the work of the service, that the risk register is reviewed and agreed, and that the benchmarking exercise is noted. And it's whether the committee are happy to approve those recommendations.
Is everyone happy to agree those recommendations? Yeah. Yep, that's agreed. Thank you. So then we'll move on to the Joint Archive Services final outturn for 24-25 and the forecast outturn for 25-26.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to update the committee on the final outturn position for the Joint Archive Service and for the forecast outturn for this financial year. So the final net revenue outturn for last financial year, 24-25, that can be seen at Appendix 1. So our net spend for the year was 927,000 compared to an approved budget of 927,000. So we had an overall break-even position. So this was after accounting for a number of items. So on the core service, Staffordshire County Council had a £13,000 underspend. This was due to one-off savings against employee costs, training and general expenditure, along with a slight overachievement of income. Stoke-on-Trent came in on budget, so a break-even position there. So the overall net underspend for Staffordshire of 13,000, that was transferred to the retrospective reserve for Staffordshire County Council. On sites and public services, Staffordshire had an overall underspend of 11,000, again due to one-off staffing savings against employees, training, transport and general expenditure of 16,000, which was partially offset by an underachievement of income of 5,000. On Stoke-on-Trent's sites and public services, we had a break-even position due to savings of 2,000 against employees, training and transport, and general expenditure with an overachievement of 4,000. So that resulted in a reduction in the original proposed transfer from the reserve of Stoke-on-Trent of 20,000, which was originally planned for the additional costs associated with moving costs of 9,000, and then there was a general budget shortfall for the archive service of 11,000. So the proposed transfer from reserve was actioned for the 9,000 moving costs, but due to the savings generated in year on the overachievement of income, this meant that only 5,000 of the originally approved 11,000 was required to be transferred from the reserve to fund the archives budget shortfall. Therefore, the overall overspend of 3,000 has been transferred to the retrospective reserve, with a split of 11,000 underspend to Staffordshire County Council's reserve and the 14,000 overspend for Stoke to provide for an overall break-even position. If I can draw your attention to Appendix 2, which details the overall reserve position for the Joint Archives Service. So in total, we hold 3 reserves, totaling 567,000. And then during the financial year, last financial year, we had a number of transactions that came both into and out of the retrospective reserves. So for Staffordshire County Council, we had a transfer into the general reserve of 24,000, of which 13 related to the underspend against the core services, and 11,000 for our underspend against public sites and services. Another transfer into Staffordshire County Council's General Reserve was for 16,000. So we had a couple of time-lapsed projects that we had surplus funding remaining. So in total, 16,000 was transferred in for the MDO and Marches network. And then we had a transfer from Staffordshire County Council's General Reserve for 30,000, which was towards the associated costs for the light sculpture in the archway entrance to the Staffordshire History Centre. So this was approved at a previous committee, that 30,000 transfer out. And then for Stoke-on-Trent, from their General Reserve, 14,000, of which 9,000 related to the removal costs associated with relocating the archives service, and then 5,000 towards the archives budget shortfall. The forecast outturn for this financial year can be seen at Appendix 3. So in total, the archives budget is 990,000, an increase of 63,000 when compared to last financial year's budget. To date, in total, the spend is 151,000, so that's nearly 15% of the total current budget of 990,000. At this stage, it's forecast that both the core and sites and public services will both break even after taking account of on core services, overall forecast underspend of 10,000, which is due to one-off savings against Stoke-on-Trent's employees due to delays of the appointment of the vacant archives manager job share post. And it's assumed that any final overall underspend, as I say, is currently 10,000, that forecast, that it would be transferred to Stoke's retrospective reserve to provide for a break-even position. Then on sites and public services, Staffordshire County Council sites and public services are forecast to break even at this stage, and Stoke-on-Trent are forecast to break even. So currently the forecast for the remaining reserves as at the end of 25-26, after accounting for the core services underspend on Stoke-on-Trent, it will available for use will be 453,000. So that's around 113,000 less than the current balance as set out in Appendix 3. So this assumes some transactions that are proposed to take place during the financial year 25-26. So as part of our Staffordshire History Centre project, we're planning to transfer 123,000 out of our general reserve as match funding towards this project. And then Stoke-on-Trent are planning to transfer 10,000 in, which is the forecast underspend against the core services, which are due to the delays in recruiting to the archives manager job share post. So that's the update for committee. Are there any questions at all?
I'm sure I've been told this, but the majority of the funding is that central government funding.
Sorry, the funding for the archives budget, or for the archives budget. Yes, that is County Council mainline funding.
Any further questions, or are we happy to move on?
I'll just do the recommendations for the committee. So are the joint committee happy to note the 24-25 final outturn position and the 25-26 current budget forecast position.
Are we all in agreement? Yeah. Yes, we are. Thank you.
And then there's just one further approval, sorry. As part of any transfers in and out of the retrospective reserves, we do get those approved at committee if they're not part of like the normal service, like your general underspends that we're reporting. So I did mention about the transfer to Staffordshire's general reserve for time-lapsed projects, the MDO and marches. So we transferred 16,000 into the reserve. So are committee members happy to approve that transfer in?
Yes, everyone's happy. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. So the next subject is the volunteer policy review.
Thank you, Chair. The background to this report is that the Joint Service currently has 105 volunteers across different locations. And in 2024 to 2025, they contributed over 5,000 hours of time in different roles and projects. A volunteer policy has been in place since 2002 and was given an extensive review and update in 2022, which made it relevant to the service's operational practices, venues, and in line with sector best practice. We also introduced a volunteer agreement at that point to support us in inducting new volunteers. Some minor changes have now been made to both the volunteer policy and the agreement to ensure that they remain relevant, up to date, and continue to support us to recruit, induct, and manage our volunteers. Our review of the policy uses sector best practice, but also ensures that the policy is in line with authority guidance. The minor changes that have been made to the policy are that the wording has been changed to acknowledge that we now have roles that are public facing, which has been based in the Staffordshire History Centre since November 2024. And the policy now covers people aged 16 above, and this is in line with Staffordshire History Centre safeguarding policy. This only actually applies to one particular volunteer role. The agreement has had two minor changes. We now have the option to provide a date of birth, which helps us to manage and review our demographic data of our volunteers and explore changing trends. And we now have an option for an exclusive newsletter via email for volunteers to keep them informed and updated on service events and activities. Our volunteers are normally surveyed annually, although there's been some disruption to this process due to the moves that both parts of the service have undertaken. So we're shortly due to put out a new survey, and that is supported by the Audience Agency, who are the Staffordshire History Centre's external evaluation company. But we know from anecdotal feedback from our volunteers that volunteering is having a positive impact on their well-being and their life goals. So we've had one volunteer describe how life-changing it's been for her, and her session is now the highlight of her week. And we've had two younger volunteers who've gained employment using the skills that they've developed during their time volunteering for us. We have a new volunteer coordinator who's been in post since July 2024, and this role gives volunteers a main point of contact and support. And we recognise and celebrate our volunteers both throughout the year and during Volunteers Week in June. So we recognise the skills and experience that they bring to the service, and that they contribute this through a variety of roles, working with collections and supporting our visitors. We've also got an additional 40 potential volunteers who are interested in volunteering, and we're currently working through to induct them into existing and new roles. So the recommendations are that the committee approve the updated volunteer policy, and that the committee note the use of an updated volunteer agreement. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Couple of questions. Do the volunteers get any form of remuneration, as in expenses or no?
No, we don't offer any expenses to our volunteers. We offer a programme of social and skills workshops, and we offer careers support for particularly for younger ones looking for employment. And we're very clear in the induction and recruitment process about this, so we manage their expectations.
That brings me on to my next question then, which is how do you map the skills of the volunteers, skills and qualifications, which are relevant to the process?
So we create a role profile for each new role, which is part of the planning process, and we do an informal interview with every potential new volunteer to make sure that they're matched to a suitable role for their skills and their well-being.
And then the next one is developing the skills, and again with children or young persons particularly in mind, developing skills and offering educational opportunities to them, such things as the Duke of Edinburgh Awards and the likes. What sort of processes or opportunities have the youngsters got?
So we don't have any direct sort of links to other schemes, but we know that some will register their volunteer hours with us for other things. So a lot of the Stafford College students will be registering their volunteer hours with us for their development. So we're always happy to sort of support and record and sign off on anything they need.
I'm thinking more of being proactive in putting that message out, again, within the schools and the various youth organisations, to say that there is an opportunity for you to volunteer as part of whichever award they're going for, and draw them in to the archives.
Yeah, it's definitely something we could consider. We're kind of almost at capacity with youth volunteering at the moment, because we've got a long-standing partnership with Stafford College, which brings in their cohort of A-level history students every year. So we've only got a very small amount of capacity, but it's definitely something we could advertise for that small amount of capacity we have.
Are there any further questions? Okay, so you would like the approval?
So if the committee could approve the updated volunteer policy and note the use of an updated volunteer agreement.
Are we in agreement? Yes, thank you. Okay, I'm assuming there's any other business? No? Okay, we've got a nice earlier finish. So the date of next meeting is the 18th November, 10:30 in Stoke. I'm assuming the full address will be given.
Yes, once I get confirmation of where it's going to be held, then I'll be sending it out and updating the invites as well. So.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and contribution. Thank you very much.